Well, thanks for stopping by. This is the age of continuous connection. Our facilitator is Marcia Williams. With over 25 years of executive technology experience, Marcia served as a chief information officer for several publicly held companies in the United States as well as Europe. And she currently sits on several boards. And we're honored to have her here today. Welcome, Marcia.
Thanks, Gene. It's great to be here.
This is such a great conversation we're going to have today. I'm so excited. Theme number 2, Respond to Desire Strategy. For people that aren't familiar with this, tell us what this is.
Okay, well, in this knowledge stream, we're using the Age of Continuous Connection article published in HBR. Look at the ways companies can successfully implement the concepts outlined. The article puts forth 4 different connected strategies that are all aimed at developing a deeper and, let's say, more resilient relationship with customers. In this particular theme, we're looking specifically at the first of those 4 strategies, which the authors have designated as the quote-unquote respond to desire strategy.
So we had a great panel that we're seated to have this conversation with. Tell us about these thought leaders and what they bring.
Our panelists here represent 9 different countries, ranging from the U.S. to Hong Kong, United Arab Emirates, just to name a few. Professionally, we have several CEOs, we have some well-known marketing and brand strategy experts, as well as leaders in the technology space.
And let's talk about your executive summary. Tell me more about Respond.
This particular strategy plays best when customers have a specific end goal in mind, which may be to purchase a specific item, such as, the dog's favorite brand of food, or it may be to deliver them and their luggage to the airport exactly at 3:30 this afternoon. Over the next few minutes, we're going to dig a little deeper into the companies that do this well and why, industries that could certainly benefit from implementing this strategy, thoughts on how it applies to the entire customer journey, and lastly, some pretty straightforward advice from the panelists.
Fantastic. Well, let's get into key point number 1 then. Companies that do this well do it very well, right?
Definitely. They have a high bar they've set on this one. In looking at those companies who sort of exemplify the emphasis on speed, precision, and minimizing customer effort, usual players like Amazon were, augmented with a few others that might not be thought of in this particular fashion. 2 of those specifically were Zappos, as Sergey points out, and, talk about minimizing customer effort. In his example, the customer knew exactly what the end result was. They were, what that looked like because they had seen a pair of shoes on a television show, and without needing to spend time researching on their own, customer service rep was able to determine exactly the pair of shoes based off the show, the episode, and the specific character. Adam points out the cable company, which is also really interesting because often they're the subject of a lot of customer criticism.
I know, right?
In this case, the ability to immediately serve up a specific movie that can be watched in, the customer's preferred location, and you don't even have to know the name, as we know. You can, trigger that microphone and say, okay, I'm looking for a movie where this was the quote, and boom, the movie is delivered to you. So it's sort of a couple of refreshing examples that may not be top of mind when we're thinking about these that execute this really well.
One thing I like that you did, Marcia, is you asked this panel of experts to tell you which brands and which companies they thought did this really, really well. In fact, did it the best. And this is their response. Walk us through this survey.
Yes, we asked our panelists, out of all the companies that had come up in the conversation, and it was a pretty extensive list, we said, okay, we want to pull out who are the top 5, so who are the ones that are truly setting the bar. Amazon, to no one's surprise, came out number 1. We're in Lyft, number 2. Yeah, they've created this speed and efficacy mantra that pretty much resonates with everyone. Google, obviously, I want immediate reactions to what I'm searching for. I want to see those results immediately, and by the way, help me buy it and all of that. Zappos, based off that Sergey's initial example, really had a lot of the panelists chiming in saying, oh my gosh, yes, And then, of course, if you combine the cable company with the capabilities of Netflix, sort of that genre, so to speak, they were rated in part of the top 5, too.
Makes sense. Let's move on to key point number 2 then. Companies who think that this just doesn't apply to me. We always hear this, right? Industries are like, oh, okay, that's great, but you don't understand my business. That would never work here. Walk us through this.
The second key point really is aimed at businesses who believe their business model or product offering is too complex to meet the criteria of this respond to desire strategy. The message here is to truly dissect your customer journey and pull out the areas where you can strengthen that customer connection, which at the end of the day provides a definite competitive advantage. And in each of these industries that are pointed out by our panelists here, medical, automotive, banking, insurance, we're seeing niche companies emerge, kind of honed in on the relatively simple transactions within that industry, executed those in a way that is so simple that customers can often make it happen on their cell phone. So the key message here being, don't be tricked into thinking your business is too complex for this approach, at least in some specific aspects of your business.
So let's move into key point number 3 then. How do you respond to bad reviews? Because that's obviously a challenge, right? With everything being connected, with everybody being online, you're going to get reviews. They're not all going to be great. What do you do when you get a bad review?
Right, and it is inevitable. I mean, this key point speaks to what should be viewed, though, as another opportunity to build trust and exceed the customer's expectations, both of which are key to executing a respond to desire strategy. Mm-hmm. And as you mentioned, within every entity, there will be customer interactions that we all know don't go the way that we planned. As when we put ourselves in the shoes of the customer, frankly, we all dread dealing with those, right?
Right.
For example, you didn't receive the correct product. You had a bad experience with a product or a service or whatever. And remembering that moving friction, customer experience is key to this strategy. Funny thing, but those are probably some of the easiest situations, quote, delight the customer.
Right.
But so often, after sales support is viewed instead as a function that needs to be performed, the least amount of effort on part of the company, and that's exactly the opposite of what should be happening in these situations.
Right. That's such a great point. Key point 4 is, I like this because it just seems like a bunch of great advice that we haven't covered earlier in our discussion. So walk me through some of this great advice and share it with everybody.
Absolutely. I mean, lastly, our panelists sort of served up what could be called some quote-unquote sage words of wisdom here. Christine and Sergey both highlight some of the table stakes. I mean, items like simplification and focusing your efforts on the customer experience. Jeffrey speaks to the fact that you need to play in what is a very dynamic environment. Anticipating what your customers will expect in the future does require a willingness to take a few risks. And I thought Sergey did a great job of sort of wrapping up this entire theme with the obvious but often overlooked concept of how respond to desire is becoming the new normal for customers who aren't going to see specific industries as an acceptable exception based off sort of their overall experiences with other industries. And I guess I would say, in other words, the common adage of, yes, but that doesn't apply to me, just isn't going to hold water any longer.
This is so good. So good. You had so much great input. It's going to be hard, but to tell us about these top 3 experts that stood out.
So what we have here are Christine, who has great experience and expertise in brand marketing, and she was also a top panelist in our first theme. Pesh is one of our technology experts focused on digital innovation, and Sergey, who is a specialist in all aspects of customer loyalty programs and also a frequent speaker on that exact topic. In our next theme, we are going to look at the second strategy from the HBR article, which is called curated offering.
That's great. I can't wait for that. Thanks again, Marcia.
Thank you, Gene.
Again, that's Marcia Williams with over 25 years of executive technology experience. She served as Chief Information Officer for several publicly held companies in the United States and Europe. She currently sits on several boards, and it was such a great honor to have you here today. And Marcia, we will talk again.
Looking forward to it, Gene.